Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of For Your Story, For Your Life, the interview series. And I am so excited, as I always am, to have my guest, Jenn Levinson, on the show with us today. And of course, we are doing what we always do with the interview series. We are going to our dark moments, our dark places, um, because I believe that it is in the darkness where we find our light. Our trauma is actually where we find a whole lot of triumph. And though it doesn't feel good, a lot of times those moments are what make life so adventurous, and they pull things out of us that we didn't even know existed. So, Jenn has her own story that she wants to share with us today. But, Jenn, we're going to start with you just introducing yourself. So, tell us a little bit about yourself before you jump into your story.
Yeah, thank you, Amy. So I'm Jenn. I'm actually from New York, and I just moved here to St. Pete, Florida in May, and I love it. I feel like I've always been meant to live here, and it's pretty crazy, and I think it's just great. I have two boys, 18 and 14. They both live up north. One's in college and one's in high school. And yeah, I'm just kind of excited to begin my own life in my own way after a challenging life before this. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
Yeah, I love that, Jenn. Well, I know that the story that you're going to share to us involves your children, which I think is such a unique story to share. I am not a mother; I don't have children, unless I count my dog Marley. Um, but one thing that I'm really excited for you to share is that a lot of times mothers feel like they have to have a certain narrative on being a mom, and your experience needs to be beautiful and all of the things, and sometimes it's difficult, and sometimes there's a lot of ups and downs. So I'm not going to tell your story. I want you to tell your story. So what I want you to do is take us to what was going on before your challenges started coming on the scene, and then take us to some of the challenges you want to share today.
Yeah, so I had always wanted to be a mom. And in 2004, I gave birth to my oldest son. And that did get off to a rough start from the very beginning. He was hospitalized a week after birth, and I was barely recovered from a C-section, an unwanted C-section. So it was challenging right from the start. He was a fussy baby. He never wanted to be put down. And that was fine. I was, an attachment parent, and I was game for all of it, but it was challenging physically, and emotionally, of course. And a few years later, actually, that's what brought me to what I do now as a postpartum doula, because I didn't want new moms to feel like they were alone or unsupported. And that's why I do what I do. And I also had some breastfeeding challenges. So I am also a lactation counselor, so I can again help and support new moms who are struggling with breastfeeding or postpartum. So that is part of what I do and why I do what I do, to pay it forward. And then I had my second son around 2008. But both of them came with their own challenges and their own unique gifts and strengths, for sure. But the challenges really were very hard for me because my relationship wasn't the greatest with my husband at the time. So it kind of just was a layer on top of a layer on top of a layer. So my oldest son had anxiety and OCD and ADHD, and my younger son, like textbook ADHD, but was extremely physical. And he also, there's a term called 2E, which is twice exceptional. So it's this asynchronous development, and it's very challenging. So while they have their gifts, they also have their deficits, and it's just you're in a constant, which way are we going today? And because he's so physical, hyper and physical and early to do everything, and it was just a lot dealing with both of them. So I always say I have one that was mentally challenging and one that was physically challenging. So it's like I could never win. I could never get ahead. And then, of course, I had my husband at the time. So I was really dealing with three challenges all the time. And only now am I just learning that my whole life had been surrounded by chaos. So my relationship with my brother, the way that my family dynamic was also very chaotic and toxic, and it's just, I guess, too much for me to bear. And clearly I repeated that in my family dynamic, and that was a lot. Um,
Yeah.
and I was alone. Um, I was married, but I was alone and unsupported in that way. We've had practitioners since my oldest son was 6 years old. So really their whole lives, I was supported in that sense, but it's not the same when you're at home and you're kind of left alone to do it all.
Yeah.
Or you're up against a wall, of someone who's not on your team or getting on board with you.
Yeah. Let's
Yeah.
go back a little bit because you said so many things that I want to unpack. So I want to go back first to your firstborn. And, obviously, when you're pregnant, from a woman's standpoint, this is supposed to be the most exciting moment of your life. Like you're about to be a mom, life is beginning. And you have this little boy who has all of these challenges. And then you have what you're going through postpartum wise. What was going on mentally and emotionally? Because I'm sure at face value, knowing women in general, like we keep going, what are you going to do? You have a child, so you're going to keep doing all of the things physically. But what's going on with you mentally and emotionally on a regular, not just with your first child, but also as it continued into having your second child?
Well, both experiences were a little bit different. So with my first, I definitely felt like a failure. I definitely felt like a lot of women do. Their body failed them in some way. I had to have a C-section. I couldn't have a vaginal birth. I waited until the last possible moment because I was that martyr, like, nope, we just keep going. But it wouldn't have mattered what I did. He wasn't coming out, he was asynclitic, so he was stuck in the pelvis. Like there was no way he was coming. So, um, but I still felt like my body didn't do what it's meant to do. And then of course, when I had tried for, a little over 2 months with the breastfeeding, and then that just wasn't because of X, Y, and Z issues, I then had to decide, I'm going to fully pump for him because that's what I wanted him to have breast milk, and it was important to me. But again, I felt like my body failed me. So I definitely went through that emotional piece of feeling like a failure and guilty for not being able to show up for him the way I needed to. Um, and then, like I said, I didn't exactly have full support at home, so I did feel lonely a lot, and you know, very sensitive at that time early on, of course, because your hormones are sensitive at that time. Um, and then with my second, the birth itself was very different, although it did also end in another C-section, unfortunately. But the experience was very different, and he nursed, and we had other breastfeeding challenges, but he did fully nurse. Um, and again, like I said, he was very physical. He was up all night because he's so distracted during the day. So it came with its own thing. But at that point in the relationship and having these two kids, with my first being so needy still, even though they're 4 years apart, it was just overwhelming. So again, that emotional sense of overwhelm, I think, came early for me. And I don't think it has quite disappeared yet at times.
Yeah. So I want to talk about your relationship with your husband at the time, because I know that you said many times that you didn't feel supported. What did
Yeah.
that look like for you, and how long was that? Did it just start when you had children, or was this something that had already been recurring?
Um, well, I think we met early on. We met in college, so we were 19, and I'm now going to be 46 soon. So a long time. I mean, we did separate in 2015. So, I think I was like 36 or something at that time, but a long time, half our lives, right? So, um, I think you're young, you don't really know, but I would say early on, I don't think I felt supported, and especially once I had my oldest son, for sure. I needed him to help me wake up, make sure that I was pumping, and he just wouldn't do that. And again, was it because he fell asleep? Did he not care? I don't really know. It was just more of like, well, you're sleeping. I'm like, yes, but I needed you to get me up. And as the kids were growing, it was just a lot of not getting on my page. Even, I'm the main parent, so it wasn't like I'm right, I know it all. It was just like, meet me where we're at. And he couldn't, whether that again was because I'm telling him what to do, or we weren't doing things that felt easy for him. I know, but I don't know,
Yeah.
So the answer was no. I think I was trying to get my needs met, and I just don't think he could hear them to meet them.
So you mentioned earlier about feeling like you were repeating the chaos of what you grew up in.
Yeah.
So while while you're creating this family and you're living and you're going, it's sometimes going on autopilot.
Yeah.
When did you start realizing that your home environment with your children is now mirroring what you grew up with? And then what did you do with that revelation?
To be honest, I'm really just discovering that now. I blocked out a lot of my childhood, apparently. I know that there were times through my marriage that, well, that I realized for sure that I was married my mother in a way. And then there were times that I noticed with the kids where I was like my mother. And so while I could acknowledge it, at times I still didn't quite know how to change it. And again, we had therapists, I was supported, the kids were supported. So I was learning along the way. But what I also discovered is or I'm still just coming to it now, is when you're coming from an empty cup, it's my circumstances that maybe made me the way that I was as a parent, which is not the way that I wanted to be. And I knew that in my mind, but because of emotions and the chaos that I was in, I guess I couldn't access the tools that I was being taught and what I needed to do all the time, right? But I kept learning, and I kept going, and I kept trying, and okay, you want me to do this? I'll try that. You want me to do this? Okay, I'll try that. Like I would do everything and anything that anybody told me, because I knew that I needed to change things. But again, it's like 2 steps forwards, and then it was always 100 steps back. Like, so I just couldn't ever catch up or get ahead, so to say. But really, it's only now that the more I'm discovering about childhood, the more I'm seeing the reflection and
Mm,
knowing that it truly was lived out again. And I know why, because we repeat our patterns until we
yeah.
change them. So it's being changed for sure. But I think that answers the question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When did you have that moment where, because you're getting all the information, but it's like nothing has really changed?
Yeah.
And I know just from the beginning that you made drastic changes with your life. So what was that moment where you were like, okay, it's not just like surface level changes. I
Yeah.
need to restart, upend, whatever that looks like. When did you get to that moment?
Yeah. So for a long time, I always was like, oh my God, I need to get away from this marriage and be done with this. It's not good for the kids. It certainly isn't good for me. It's not good for him. But I just couldn't do it out of, I guess, sheer fear, right? Because you don't know. Like when you're in it, it's comfort in the chaos, right? That's all you know. It's all that's familiar to you. You don't know what life then is like outside of that anymore. So I was afraid to lose the family. I was afraid to lose finances. I mean, I was afraid of lots of things. So I think that just, as bad as it was for me, it just kept me in it. And I was seeing a social worker slash Reiki master at the time. This is about 2014, 15, I guess. 2014, I started to realize like, okay, stuff was happening inside my body, and that wasn't good. So like now I wasn't healthy. on the inside and outside. Like I knew I wasn't well, but it started to like wreak havoc physically. I didn't know why yet, but that's when I was like, okay, something has to change. And so I was trying to get help. So I started with a mindfulness coach, and that really started to open my mindset to like looking at things differently, seeing him and myself in different ways, starting different practices like yoga and other, energetic modalities. So my eyes were getting opened in preparation, I guess, for what was going to come. And at the time, again, 2015, I was seeing a social worker who's also a Reiki master, and she was doing a group called Time. And it was going on each of the chakras each week, one chakra a week. And wherever we were in that system, you had private sessions also. So in our private session, she said, you're very close. Like there's just going to be that one thing now that's going to happen. I remember she's like, it's like you're on the top of the mountain, you're on that cliff and you're ready to jump, and there's just that carrot that's dangling and you're going to just go and grab it. And I was like, okay, sure. Cause I thought I'd been there a million times. But she was right. And there was a moment with my younger son at the time, and he said some things that were pretty deep and profound. And I was like, well, and that was seen. We're done. and that enabled me to actually be ready and move forward. I mean, it took me 2 seconds. I mean, there was no after my whole body reacted to it, and I knew that this was the moment. And that's what happened. And I called my mom and I said, don't say a word. I'm just coming with the boys tomorrow and don't ask me anything. And so that's what I did. And it took him a while. I mean, I had to go back to the house the next day, and it took him a while to give me some space because, again, he didn't respect things that I ever needed or asked for. So, and I can understand why at that point he probably didn't believe me, who knows, whatever. But it took him about 2 weeks until he could give me some space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the aftermath of this, because sometimes I think people don't understand that the first step is really the first step, and then everything else that follows is where you actually start dealing with it, where you actually, I mean, you just said that phrase, comfort in chaos, literally gave me chills, because that's
Mhm.
so true. When you come out of chaos and you're so used to it, sometimes you just start looking for, hey, where's the next chaotic situation? Oh, I came out of that chaotic relationship. Where's the next chaotic guy? So what did the journey on the other side of that chaos, what did that look like for you, and what is that looking like for you?
Well, thank goodness, like I said, I started early and I found all these modalities that led up to it because I was now immersed in that. So then I got even like more immersed in that. So like I had found a spiritual community a little bit. I had all these practitioners already lined up. So I just took all the money basically and invested in myself. So my doula practice slowed down, all in alignment, right? Because now it was time for me to take care of myself. And, because I gave everything I had to everyone else, which I enjoyed doing, but also it nearly killed me at the same time, right? So I really just invested in myself and spent a lot of time healing and discovering, right? And I'm still on that journey. Believe it or not. And, we're never healed and we're never done. It's always a work in progress because there's 100,000 layers. But basically, I had a lot of gut issues. That was the biggest thing that kept coming. So I was told by a cranial sacral that I wasn't able to digest my food because I couldn't digest my life. And I was like, well, that was like the changing of the tides also moment where I was just like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. And so I had to simplify. And again, I had my acupuncturist. She's like, okay, well, now we're going to simplify your food. And so one thing just kept leading to the next, to the next, to the next. And it wasn't easy. And each one of them have been a battle for sure. But I've learned more and more about myself and realizing my side of the street and places where I needed to hold myself accountable and every time something would come up, I would text him and sorry of this or that, or, I didn't mean to be like this for my things. And again, it wasn't a ton, but they're things. Same with my kids, like in different ways. Obviously, you can't tell them like everything. They were still young. I mean, they were 10 and 6. So, but, little things along the way. But after right away, it was fine once he left. And, then we had, shared time with the kids, of course. But yeah, we had it under like keeping it somewhat the same so that we kept the camaraderie between everybody. Because again, my kids, it's just a very challenging situation. They've never had consistency. They've never had, and so I was just really trying to build that with them, not realizing that when it was going really well, I should have known that, well, maybe now it won't, and it didn't. And what happened was this, I called it the anti-Jen movement. So he like completely shut me out. All my fears came right in my face. I lost the family, the this, the that, like everything and anything that I was afraid of just kept coming. And that lasted for like a good year. So again, I've learned a lot what relationships wanted to stay, what relationships needed to go. I had to grieve a lot of relationships and just work through each and every one of those, which was really hard. And get better at non-attachment. I mean, there's so many things along the way that I had to learn and heal from. And they've only gotten me closer to myself and myself in a better place because of that. Because you're holding on and you think this thing is so good for you and so right for you. But then when it's gone, you're like, oh, I didn't really need that, or that person really wasn't best for me. Like, oh yeah, that makes so much sense. And now I don't have to live with like whatever it is, So there's a lot of release in a lot of that. And the divorce process is never fun. I don't care how good of a relationship or how amicable you are. The process itself is just not enjoyable. And when you have two people that could never see eye to eye on things, it was extremely challenging. So that lasted till about 2017. And he's remarried and she's lovely and she's great to my kids and they have their own son and I love him like he's one of mine. Like, so, it can be good. Is it ideal? Is it exactly how I want it to be? No. But am I thankful for what it is? Yes. I wouldn't say there's, a lot of co-parenting because again, he's still who he is. I am who I am. So it's never going to be a match and that's okay. I just have to learn how to work around it. But yeah, every day, literally every day, you keep learning and growing, changing, shifting, all those words.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love it. If you go back to that time period and everything you went through, of course, there's like so many layers of what you learned about yourself, how you healed. But if you could say the thing that you are most grateful for, that the piece of light that you were able to find and hold on to, that you like hold as dearest, what would you say that is?
I would say the self-care piece because I never understood that or had that or did that, I don't think. And when I kept learning what that was and the permission to do nothing, like that was so hard for me. But once I started like a day where I literally sat and did nothing, it was like, oh, that's amazing. Like my body doesn't know how to do that, right? So self-care became like the biggest thing, right? Those 3 years that I was really intense in it. And now in my doula practice, in my Reiki practice, it's all about self-care and taking care of yourself. Oxygen mask, that's another thing I learned. Oxygen mask on yourself first. Then you can help everybody else. And it's like, oh yeah, that's right. Like, duh. And so
Hmm.
I practice what I preach, or I try to anyways, but I definitely preach that a lot to a lot of women, new moms, friends, whomever, because that's what a lot of us women lack, is that piece that we feel like we get to come first. And we do, and we should, for ourselves. And again, I still practice this. I still, have to hone in on it all the time and remember it. But that I think is the biggest thing that I was taught and able to learn how to make sure that becomes a priority in my life.
Yeah. This is going to come with telling us how we can get in contact with you, because I know that you're doing a lot of really incredible things specifically for women. But with what you're currently doing, tell us what you're currently doing, but also tell us, how are you using your traumas, or what your trauma brought to you? How are you using that and putting it back into your business?
Okay, so I'm a postpartum doula, lactation counselor, like I shared. So my practice is called devotional doula, and my little subset, Reiki Waves, is my Reiki practice. So I do incorporate Reiki in my postpartum support, but of course, Reiki is for anyone in the public, whether you're local or distance. It doesn't matter whether you're male, female, or anything else in between. It's for all people, all body types, everyone, everything. It's just light energy work, to help rebalance and recalibrate your chakras in your system so that you can feel more balanced and, more whole. And in my postpartum support, it's to create a safe, nurturing environment for, to help ease the uncertainty and help new moms flourish during the transitional time after birth. And in both of those, how I can use my past and my traumas and my healing process in those lines of work is obviously for my own birth experiences and my challenges in those experiences, as well as, the benefits of them, and I don't want to say, the bad and the good, but like, the rewarding times too, because as challenging as it is, there's so many rewarding moments. You can't change that, and they do outweigh, right? Because they weigh heavy in the heart more than the challenges, right? So, but it's really that encouragement to the new moms. You're not alone, and it's okay, because we have so much mother's guilt, and it starts from the time that baby exits, right, and comes into this world. That mother's guilt is like a real thing, and I had it a lot. I still have it, and we have to practice that and work with that. And it's like, no, you can have something for yourself first. It's okay. So it's just encouraging them that, you do come first. You're here to care for your baby, but if you need rest, let's take that rest, because if you don't have that rest, how are you going to care for the baby? Or, I just really want to clean that pile off the floor. Well, great, because if you can clean that pile off the floor and then be able to put your baby down for a nap, excellent, like whatever it is. So self-care doesn't always have to be like, oh, I have to go get my nails done, or, oh, I need to have a spa day. No, self-care are just things that are going to make you feel good or bring you joy. And so it's just those simple things that, especially when you're a new mom and you're in complete brain fog and sleep deprivation and everything else, and you have no clue what's happening, I'm kind of there as that little fairy reminder, and just to help guide them along the way, again, so that they can flourish and step into their own. And also about listening to your gut, right? So clearly I didn't listen to mine very well, and now I know more how to. So I also like to give that as well. So I don't know, how do I do this? How do I do that? Well, I mean, I could tell you, but what do you think? And what do you feel? Let's tune into that, And so really getting them from that day one to tune into that so that they can then teach their child how to do the same thing. So I kind of come from all of my, I'm not going to call them mistakes, right? But all my experiences, and bring them forward to the new moms. And then in Reiki, it's different but similar, right? Because here I am now, just channeling and giving to them in a way, but it's going to help them to heal themselves. So I've had so many people come and they're like, "Oh my God, thank you." And I'm like, "I didn't do anything. You did that. I just gave you the space for it to occur within you." So, some people have healed inner child moments. Some people have cried because they've realized a choice that they needed to make. But I didn't make that choice for them. I gave them the open space. I cleared whatever needed to be cleared or helped them release whatever it was. And now they have clarity and they're able to move forward. And that's really what I'm all about, is just helping people step into their own power, know that they deserve whatever it is that they want or feel like they need, and to stand up for themselves basically, and just get what you need.
Yeah.
How you need to. Yeah. So
I love that, Jen. Last question, and this will take us out. I want you to talk directly to a person who might be where you were years ago at that stage of like feeling like they need to take an action, or they're ready to do something drastic with their life, but all the fears are there, and they are comfortable in chaos, but want to get out. What would be a piece of advice that you could give?
okay, I am going to tell you, audience members, I promise you, I promise you, when I thought there was no light at the end of the tunnel, right? I thought, I'm going to run away. I'm going to do these things. Like I really, really could have wanted to die. Like I was done. And, and I was afraid. Like I said, I just didn't know how to do it. And when I did, when I took that very first, I guess, leap of faith, like it was the best decision I ever did. And it saved myself, it saved my kids in some way, I'm sure. And it saved my husband, to be honest, right? So I only wanted everybody to be happy and get what they need and what they deserve. And I still want that for all of us. And and my life has changed so much from that decision. And it's so hard to see it when you're in it. But I guarantee you that if you feel you're stuck or you feel like there's no way out, there is. It's just about trust. And that's what I've been learning. And then when I moved from New York, where I've lived my entire life, and I said, I'm going to St. Pete, and it all magically occurred and manifested itself in 9 months. I couldn't believe it. But everything I've been asking for, everything I've been missing in my life has been here. And is it perfect? Of course not, because there is no such thing. But I mean, I have sped up my process since being here. I have found light, I've found joy, I found soul. I mean, the sun is my medicine, the beach is my medicine for real. Like, and I knew that and I got here, but you find the things you can hold on to, and that's what's going to help you move forward. And just trust and know that if you are thinking there's a different way, there is. And then believe that. Listen to the gut. I didn't listen to it. I kept poo-pooing it and ignoring it. And don't do that. Don't do that, because as scary as it might be and as comfortable as you think you are, there's a better way to live and not survive. That's another thing. I wanted to live. I didn't want to keep surviving.
I love it. Jen, thank you so much. What an incredible story. So many takeaways, so many nuggets that you dropped that I'm sure so many people are going to be able to take away and navigate their own lives, because that's how we live, right? We learn from each other. We learn from ourselves and we learn from each other. So thank you for being here, for vulnerably sharing your story. So appreciate it. And thank you to all of you who are watching or listening, however you are consuming this podcast. We thank you so much. Remember, your darkness is where you find your light. And wherever you are on your journey, know that everything in your life has value and everything is working for your good. So when you free your story, you free your life. See you all next time.